This is SkillBridge Institute. We are still on project management, and right now we are going to discuss about cost estimation methods as well as budgeting basics. So the first thing that we need to understand is that what is cost estimation? So we need to understand that cost estimation, we are talking of predicting total expenses for a particular project, that is including labor, materials, equipment, as well as all the indirect costs. So when you try to predict the amount of money that you are going to use on your project, that is cost estimation. So from there, let's understand the importance of cost estimation. Number one, secure funding. When you are able to estimate your cost, you can easily find some other organizations or some other individuals who can help you in your project, whether it's business project or it's a social project. From there, you are able to manage resource efficiently. So once you are able to estimate cost, you can be able to manage resources efficiently. From there, you are able to prevent budget overruns. You are able to prevent budget overruns just because you have got that capacity of estimating cost. You will not be caught in that position where your budget has run out, but the project is what? Still progressing. So let's talk about cost estimation method. Number one, it is analogous estimation. So on analogous estimation, on that one, you are basing on historical data. So you have got history or you have got data somewhere else. So you are going to take that particular data and to say that if I can compare this past data with my current project, then that particular data is going to help you to understand the amount of money that you are going to spend on your project. You need to understand that this one is quick but less accurate. The simple reason is that why is it less accurate? It is because you are using historical data. You find that maybe the data that you are using in that particular moment, let's say currency was just good, but at that particular moment, whenever you are doing your project, you find that there has been devaluation that has been done. So that particular historical data cannot give you a clear picture which you can use at this particular moment. That's why it is less accurate. Right, for example, you are using past project as a reference. So we have already talked on that one. Number two, cost estimation method is parametric estimation. So on parametric estimation, on this one, you are using statistical models based on variables. So, for example, you want to build houses or units. So each particular house or unit costs $5,000, but you want to build 20 units. That means on statistical data, you're simply going to say, if one unit will cost $5,000, what about 20 units? So it will simply be 5,000 times 20, which is giving you $100,000. Another cost estimation method is bottom-up estimation. So on bottom-up estimation, on this one, you make detailed breakdown of tasks. So here you try to understand the whole of your project. Then you break down each and every task on its on its own. And each task, you assign a small budget to it. So all the tasks, by the end of the day, you are going to come up with total amount of your budget basing on the budget for each particular task. So this one, it is most accurate and it is very good because each task has got a budget assigned to it. But by the end of the day, it is time intensive because breaking down those particular tasks, your project into small tasks, it is time consuming. Let's talk about cost estimation. Another one, it is 3-point estimating. So on 3-point estimating, we are using a concept of optimistic, pessimistic, as well as the most likely. So if we're talking of optimistic cost estimation, on this one, we are talking of the smallest amount of money that you can put into a project whenever things are running smoothly. So on optimistic, you are considering an ideal situation to say, if things are just smooth, how much can I spend? On pessimistic, you are saying, if things are hard in my project, how much can I spend? On most likely, here you are using a normal scenario where there is a mixture of good and what? Bad things. So you're saying, if there will be just normal conditions, how much can my budget be like? So on 3-point estimating, use this particular formula where we're saying optimistic plus 4M, which is most likely, then plus pessimistic. The whole of it divided by 6. So there we have got an example where on optimistic we've got $5,000, on most likely we've got $6,000, then on pessimistic we have got $8,000. So if we punch those particular numbers into that particular formula, then if we say 5,000 plus 4 multiplied by 6,000 plus 8,000, the whole of that amount divided by 6, the answer that you find there, it is $6,166.67. So that is 3-point estimating. From there, we have got another cost estimation method, that is expert judgment. So this one, it is based on experience. So those who are professionals in project management for a particular project, they can just try to look at the project and say, based on my experience, I can say this particular project is going to cost this much. So that is one thing that we need to understand. So this one, it is useful when no data is available, but by the end of the day, it is less reliable. So let's say you have got very few data that you can use, then you can simply involve an expert to give an estimate. But this one, it is not reliable because you're just doing on somebody's judgment. We need to understand that what is budgeting. If we're talking of budgeting, that is allocating resources to cover all project costs. So when you are allocating your resources so that every part of your project is covered, that is budgeting. Let's talk about characteristics of our budgeting. Number one, it's supposed to be comprehensive. That means it is supposed to cover all direct and indirect costs. So if we're talking of the direct costs, let's say you are having a construction project. You are buying things like cement, which will be direct used on your project. That is a direct cost. You are paying wages to the laborers who are doing the actual work. That is direct cost. If we're talking of indirect costs, we can give an example of, at your project, maybe you have an office. Inside your office, you need stationery. It is an indirect cost because it will not be directly needed on your project tasks. So you need stationery, you might need a laptop, you need internet. Those are indirect what? Costs. So make sure that in your budget, you consider all the direct as well as the indirect cost. Another one should be realistic. So on realistic, it should be achievable. Your project should be achievable. It shouldn't be something that shouldn't be achieved. So it should be something that can be achieved on the ground. It should be flexible. So it should be, your budget should have that capacity of changing once the environment changes. So by the end of the day, make sure that your budget is flexible enough. Steps to create a budget. Number one, identify direct and indirect costs. So another one, you should use cost estimation method. So you can choose on those particular cost estimation method which we said earlier on. Another one, you need to add contingency, that is 5 to 10%. Then you need to allocate resources. So you need to allocate resources on each and every task. So that is what you need to know. From there, you need to monitor and adjust. Once you are able to make your budget, you should be able to monitor your budget, check your budget, as well as adjust if those adjustments are needed on your project. Let's talk about best practices as well as the common mistakes. Let's start with best practices. Number one, you should involve stakeholders for accuracy. Make sure that if you are doing your budget, all the stakeholders are involved. Another one, you should be able to use tracking tools for spending. So use tracking tools like Microsoft and other softwares for you to spend properly on your budget. Then review regularly and update. So as your work is progressing, make sure that you are reviewing your budget, and if there is need for updating, try to update your budget. Maintain transparency. That means all the team members as well as the stakeholders, they should need to understand whatever is happening with your budget. From there, you need to plan for risks and contingency. So on this one, you need to add some extra income or some extra money in case you are going to face some risks. And you even need to add a certain amount of contingency. That is 5 to 10% of your total budget. Let's talk about common mistakes. Underestimating costs or ignoring indirect expenses. So on this one is where you do not give the exact amount that is supposed to be given to specific tasks, or you ignore indirect costs. For example, buying stationery for your project, those indirect costs, you try to ignore them. So those are some of the mistakes that you can make. Another one, it is failing to update budgets with project changes. You understand that you have encountered a scope creep, but by the end of the day, you are not talking anything to do with what? Budget, or you are not tackling on budget. So once you need to understand that once there is this change in your project tasks, your budget must also change. But if you fail, that is a common mistake. And another one, it is overestimating resources, leading to tied up funds. So on this one, it is where you make overestimates, and by the end of the day, you are running your project, but after running the whole of your project, you find that there are still some other funds hanging somewhere else, and that shouldn't happen by somebody who is a professional project manager. You should make sure that you don't have tied up funds in your projects just lingering around, and you have nowhere to allocate those particular funds. So that is what you need to understand. You as a project manager, you're most welcome. Wishing you all the best.